Dear woman, if you have ever felt like your fullness made someone uncomfortable, please listen carefully, because sometimes you will not be too much. You will just be more than his insecurity can manage. Too strong, too smart, too discerning, too vocal, too ambitious, too aware, too goal-driven, too clear, too alive. Too much of something that forces a man to confront the places where he has not grown. And if he is not secure, he will not call it his insecurity. He will call it your problem. He will say you are intimidating, you are difficult, you are not soft enough, you are too independent, you are too opinionated, you are too ambitious. You are making him feel less of a man. And slowly, if you are not careful, you will start adjusting yourself around his discomfort. You will speak less, dream smaller, celebrate quietly, hide your intelligence, soften your opinions until they no longer sound like truth, downplay your achievements, pretend you do not see what you see, apologize for the very qualities God placed inside you, and before you know it, you are not being loved, you are being reduced. That is the trap. A man's insecurity can make a woman feel like her glory is the problem. But your strength is not an attack on his manhood. Your intelligence is not an insult to his masculinity. Your purpose is not disrespect. Your clarity is not rebellion. Your ambition is not pride. Your confidence is not arrogance. Your fullness is not a threat to a man who is whole. It is only a threat to a man who needs you smaller to feel tall. That line matters because many women have spent years removing jewels from their crown, one jewel at a time. Your voice, your standards, your dreams, your education, your calling, your purpose, your confidence, your friendships, your visibility, your boundaries, your joy, your fire. Not because those things are wrong, but because someone made you feel like they were too heavy for him to hold. So you became easier to manage, easier to predict, easier to silence, easier to approve of, easier to love, or so you thought. But what kind of love requires you to dismantle yourself first? What kind of love asks you to become less alive so another person can feel more powerful? What kind of man needs the woman beside him to shrink so he can finally feel large? That is not love. That is insecurity looking for accommodation. And many women have been trained to accommodate it. They have been taught, do not make a man feel small. But nobody taught them to ask why a woman becoming herself makes him feel small in the first place. Nobody taught them to ask why his identity depends on her reduction. Nobody taught them to ask why his peace requires her silence. Nobody taught them to ask why his confidence collapses when her light is visible. Because a healthy man is not threatened by a woman's crown. He does not need her to remove the jewels. He grows the capacity to honor what she carries. He understands that her strength does not make him weak. Her brilliance does not dim him. Her purpose does not erase him. Her voice does not compete with his. Her becoming does not mean his disappearance. A secure man knows that standing beside a powerful woman does not make him less of a man. It reveals whether he has the character to work with her. And that is where discernment matters. Because some men will admire your crown from a distance and resent the weight up close. They will be attracted to your strength until your strength tells them no. They will love your intelligence until your intelligence questions their inconsistency. They will praise your confidence until your confidence refuses manipulation. They will say they want a purpose-driven woman until your purpose requires space, respect, support, and sacrifice. They will say you are different until your difference becomes inconvenient. And then suddenly, the very thing that drew them to you becomes the very thing they try to discipline out of you. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to the person who loved your light until it exposed something in them. Pay attention to the person who praised your voice until your voice told the truth. Pay attention to the person who admired your strength until your strength stopped serving their agenda. Because sometimes what they call too much is simply the part of you they cannot control. And if you believe them, you will start editing your God-given design for human approval. You will start confusing compatibility with self-reduction. You will start thinking maybe if I become softer, quieter, smaller, easier, he will love me better. But a love that improves when you disappear is never love. It was access. It was control. It was convenience. It was a relationship with a version of you that did not challenge him to grow. And hear me clearly. There is absolutely nothing wrong with softness. There is nothing wrong with humility. There is nothing wrong with gentleness. There is nothing wrong with learning how to communicate with wisdom. But softness is not self-erasure. Humility is not pretending you have no strength. Gentleness is not shrinking your calling, and wisdom is not hiding your brilliance so an insecure person can feel comfortable. You do not have to become harsh to stop shrinking. You do not have to become cold to stop being reduced. You simply have to stop calling someone else's insecurity your assignment, because it is not your assignment to make a man feel like a man by becoming less of a woman. It is not your assignment to lower your capacity so he does not have to confront his. It is not your assignment to bury your gifts so his ego can breathe. It is not your assignment to apologize for the crown God placed on your head. And yes, some people will say, oh, you are too much. Let them. Too much of what? Too much for manipulation, too much for control, too much for mediocrity, too much for a man who wants a woman he can manage rather than a woman he can honor, too much for a relationship that requires a reduction to survive. Then maybe too much is not an insult. Maybe it is information. Maybe it tells you the environment is too small. Maybe it tells you the hands are not strong enough. Maybe it tells you that what you carry was never meant to be placed in the care of someone who resents its weight, because you do not need a smaller crown. You need a man with bigger hands. Hands large enough to hold your strength without feeling threatened. Hands steady enough to support your purpose without competing with it. Hands clean enough not to steal your confidence. Hands humble enough to honor what God placed in you. Hands secure enough not to turn your brilliance into a battleground. That is the difference. The wrong man will make you feel like your crown is the problem. The right man will understand that your crown is part of your design. He will not worship it. He will not be intimidated by it. He will honor it. He will not ask you to remove jewels so he can feel comfortable holding what he was never prepared to carry. So, dear woman, stop asking, am I too much? Start asking, too much for whom? Because that answer matters. You may be too much for an insecure man, too much for a controlling man, too much for a man who wants admiration without accountability, too much for a man who needs your silence to feel strong, too much for a man who confuses leadership with domination. But you are not too much for God. You are not too much for your assignment. You are not too much for your future. You are not too much for the life you were created to live. And you will not become safer by becoming smaller. You will only become less of yourself. So, if you have been removing jewels from your crown, pick them back up. Your voice, your clarity, your joy, your confidence, your boundaries, your standards, your vision, your discernment, your fire, your God-given identity. Pick them back, not with arrogance, but with remembrance, because you were not created to become a diminished version of yourself so someone else can feel secure in their immaturity. This is Redefine Your Narrative, and maybe the narrative you need to redefine is this: I do not need a smaller crown. I need to stop handing it to people whose hands were never big enough to honor what God placed inside of me. God bless you.